And if you want to see how I'm making some hunting arrows for my recurve bow, then stay tuned. So today I thought I'm going to switch to hunting arrows, which I also can use for practicing. And in the recent years I have shot this brand here, which is called Cross X Madeira. It's a carbon arrow which looks like wood, but it's not wood, so it's really just a tube of carbon. And yeah, with those I have really good experience. But if you are searching for a good brand for your arrows, you can pretty much take anyone. So I heard a rumor that most of the carbon arrows are produced in the same 4 factories in China. I don't know if it's true, but if you look at the arrows, they are all quite the same. So it really just depends on the look of your arrow. Do you want a black arrow or an arrow which looks like wood, like these ones? And I don't think that the brand is such a difference anymore. So even if you choose some cheaper brand, I think you will still be fine. Now the arrow brands that I've used before I switched to this arrow was Gold Tip. And Gold Tip is also a very high quality brand, but it's also very expensive. And it's a little bit thicker than the arrows I'm using now. So these Gold Tip arrows here, they have a diameter of 0.246. And my new ones are a little bit tinier. So these have a diameter of 0.245. So my new arrows are just a little bit smaller than the old ones that I've used, but it makes a huge difference in weight. So now I'm preferring arrows which are a little bit lighter, and that's because I'm only shooting like 35 pounds right now. So if you like shoot 40 or 45 pounds, then you can take Gold Tip arrows with no problem. They will be perfect for you. So for every strong person, the Gold Tip I can really recommend. But for me, for a lady who is not that strong, 35 pounds is my favorite weight right now that I'm drawing. And this is why I'm going for an arrow which is a little bit smaller in diameter and a little bit lighter. So this is why I'm choosing the Cross X Madeira brand right now. Okay, so once you have your arrows, it's really important that you cut it off to your personal length. So it's no use if the arrow is too long, because then you have unnecessary weight. Now this arrow here is 29 inches long, and you measure it from the bottom of the nock and you measure it to the end here. So it's 29 inches. Now these arrows are a little bit longer than my older ones. I wanted to have half an inch more, because if you are drawing the bow, you do not want to pull the tip into your hand. And if you are using hunting tips, you can cut yourself into the index finger. And this is why now I'm using an arrow which is a little bit longer than my draw weight. So that's just for safety purposes. The spine of my arrows right now is 700, so that's not too stiff, but it's also not too weak. And if you're shooting like more pounds, then you have to get stiffer arrows. If you're shooting less than that, then you can get arrows which are softer. Okay, so now I want to put on some fletching onto my arrows, and later we want to put in some inserts as well. Okay, to put on some fletching professionally, you want to get a fletching device like this one here. This is by the company Bear Paw. I've had it for over 10 years now. And you basically have this clamp here. And first you take your arrow and you make sure that the nock is at the same position every time. So mine is set here, which is exactly where the front on the arrow is. And then you insert it into your fletching device. At the first step, you put it in here, and next you take your clamp, and as lead feather I want to take this one here, which looks very traditional and natural. And actually these are real feathers. I think real feathers are the best for recurve bows. Okay, next I'm taking a super glue, which is drying pretty quickly. But you can also take other glues. For the glue, I have to say, it's best if you are asking around your archery friends, because it varies with the region where you live. The glue that I have here is called Cyberbond, and it's doing a real good job at gluing fletching. So I'm just using a little bit of glue on the fletching, and then here you can see 2 magnets, and you just put on the clamp like so. You press it all the way back, and then you press it onto the arrow like this. And after 2 minutes you can release the clamp and glue on the next feather. Okay, so now while we are waiting for the glue to harden, I want to show you my tips that I'm using. So this tip here is an old top hat tip that I used. It has 100 grain and the arrow was flying okay. So now 100 grain is actually very popular with archers that do tournaments, and it's working great, it's very precise. But actually for hunting you want to have a little bit more weight for penetration, because if the tip of the arrow is too light, then it won't penetrate the skin and the flesh so much. So actually most archers recommend a higher tip weight if you want to do hunting. So here we have another top hat stainless steel tip, and this one here has 145 grain. So that's pretty heavy, and also a lot of hunting tips have the same weight. So let's check out these hunting tips here. So I found this hunting tip on Amazon. So if you take a look at this hunting tip, this one is for small animals, and I found it on Amazon, and it was sold as a 150 grain tip. And if you want to check the weight of your tips, then it's always good if you take a scale and if you set it to grain, because this is the unit that archers are using. So let's measure this tip first. So this is the practicing tip. You're not going to hunt with this, okay? And this tip has 144.7 grain. So that's almost 145 grain. Now next I'm going to weigh this smaller hunting tip. Okay, so this one has 150 grain. So it's just a little bit heavier than this one, and you can swap these two out. Now for most archery ranges, hunting tips like these are not allowed because they actually destroy the targets too quickly, and this is why they are banned at most ranges, at least here in Austria. But you can practice with this tip here, which has almost the same weight, and this way you can still practice as if you have a hunting tip on your arrow. So you practice with this tip, and then you switch out the tips if you want to go hunting for real. Okay, this one is a little bit lighter, so not all of those have the exact same weight. This one has 147 grains, for example. This one is a little bit heavier again. So it's always good if you weigh your weights to make sure that they all have the same weight. And if one is a little bit too heavy, then you just take a file or a belt sander and you sand them down a little bit to make sure that they all have the same weight. Alright, so for my arrows, for practicing, I'm going to use this tip because it has the same weight as the other hunting tips here. So 150 grain is an excellent weight for hunting, and you can also go like a little less, like 125 or a little bit more. And when I tried out this heavier tip the first time, the feeling of shooting the arrow was so much better. It was really nice, and yeah, also I thought that I'm more precise with a heavier weight because the arrow is not disturbed as much. So if you make a little mistake, it's forgiving you that small mistake more easily than, for example, a lighter tip here. Okay, so now the first feather is glued on. You open the clamp and then pull it off, and the feather stays on the shaft. Next, you just turn this device, the knob here, to the right, and the next feather that I want to use is a white one. And here I just pretty much do the same. I insert it into the clamp like so. Okay, now for the inserts. Today I'm going to use these aluminum inserts. So these are glued into the shaft and they are pretty flat. They have a flat surface. So for those you always want to take super glue. And you have to find out which one is a good one. So for the inserts I'm taking this glue here, which is called Blitzfix, but you probably won't get this abroad. So it's really important that you ask other archers in your region which super glue is the best one. Because with some super glues that are not that great, it can happen that with the vibration the insert will get loose because the glue is breaking, and then you can lose the tip, including your insert. Now if you are using gold tip arrows, you can get the gold tip brand, and here you can see that you have a really profiled insert, so you have really deep grooves as opposed to this one. And with the gold tip insert I found that it works best if you are using hot glue on the insert and then you're pressing it into the shaft. Hot glue is really good for inserts, and it's holding the insert super well inside of the shaft. Now, why am I not using the gold tip insert? Well, that's because it's a little bit too big for my arrows. So it's not fitting into my arrows here, as you can see. So these are only made for arrows which have a diameter of 0.246. That's really unfortunate because it's a really good insert and I love it. So now I'm using this insert and I'm going to use super glue with it. And because this is so flat, the hot glue does not really work. So it doesn't have a space to go into. So here with the gold tip insert, you have more grooves, and this is why it's working really well with hot glue. But with this flat surface here on this insert, it's not working really well. And this is why I'm using super glue. And as you can see, it fits perfectly into my carbon shafts. Okay, now it's time for the next feather. Okay, last but not least, you can also use some protector rings for the front and the back. I'm going to use this at the front because it's prolonging the life of your arrow. So if you are shooting your arrow at rocks, you have a good chance that it's surviving 2 or 3 shots. But with this protector ring, you can double the longevity of your arrow. So these caps here, or protective rings, they are really great, and they do not cost a lot, so it really pays off if you use them. And the size of my protective caps is 7.3 millimeters, and they perfectly fit over my shaft. So you just take this like that, and then you put it over like so. Now the thing is, you also want to glue it down to make sure that there's no rattle or movement. So this is why I'm taking my super glue here. I just use a bit at the inside, and now we glue it on to the tip of the arrow. And that's it. Super easy, and now your front is protected. Also at the backside here I'm using a white knock, and white is very visible and it's easy to be seen, so it's perfect for camera shots. And also without the camera it's nice to see where you shoot your arrows, and then you will have a greater learning effect. You can also use like orange or green, any color which is bright works great. One time I've used black knocks because they looked really cool, but I did not see where I shot the arrow, and that was really bad for my learning experience. So this time I'm using white knocks. Okay, let's take a look now. Alright, our fletching is finished. So you can see that I've chosen a dark lead feather and the others two are white. Usually the lead feather is pointing away from the arrow. This is how you traditionally shoot an arrow like this. And also, of course, you can choose any kind of color for the fletching that you want. So here I have a small box with fletching, and you can get pretty much any kind of size of fletching and any kind of color. So here I have blue ones, I have like black and white ones, you can get pink ones and green ones. So there are so many shapes and colors that you can get, that you can completely personalize your arrow, and this way you exactly know which one is yours. One thing which is really important is the size of the feather. So if you are using feathers which are really long and big, then it will slow down your arrow. And if you are using very small ones like these ones here, these are 3 inches in length, then your arrow will fly faster. So it really depends on what you want. Now, if you are a very weak person and you do not have a strong bow, then I recommend that you get fletching or feathers which are really short, because they don't slow down your arrow too much. And if you have a stronger bow, you can go to a bigger fletching size. So here we have 4 inches, for example. So I'm using 4 inches because I'm not so keen on the arrow speed, but I rather want to have a stable arrow. And of course, the longer your feathers are, the more stable your arrow is going to fly. As you can see, there are many colors available, really beautiful ones. Some are also very expensive and some are really good looking. So it really depends on your personal preference. Okay, so here right at the end of the feathers, they are a little bit exposed, and those will constantly rub over the shelf and the window. So you want to protect the tip a little bit to make sure that you're not ripping off the fletching. And you can use an electrical tape for this, and that's what I'm using. So in this case I'm using a white one because I think it fits the color of my arrows. And I just go around the tip of the fletching a couple of times to make sure they're not getting damaged, and also to make sure that if you have to shoot them over your hand, that they are not ripping open your skin. So that's another important thing to consider. But like this, they are looking really good, and yeah, it's super easy to make. Now, as an alternative to electrical tape, you can also use some shrink tube, and you just put it over the beginning of your feathers, and then you shrink it with a lighter, for example, and this also works great. But I do not have white shrink tube available right now, and this is why I'm using this electrical tape. Okay, so here we are still missing a protective cap, and it's really important that you insert this before the insert comes into place. And then you want to glue on the cap. So to make sure that the insert really holds, I take a little bit of this sandpaper here. You stick it into the arrow and you sand the inside of the arrow. And the length of the sandpaper should be about the length of your insert. It's really important that you make the inside surface rough, because then the glue has a better grip. You take an old tip that you have lying around, you screw it into the insert, and then you take some ethanol, put it on a cotton pad, and you clean your insert. So there can't be any fat from your fingers on the insert. You lay it here. Then also you take some earbuds and you use some ethanol to clean out the inside of the arrow. And you would be surprised how dirty the inside of carbon arrow is. So usually they are really, really dirty, they are black, there's carbon dust everywhere, and this is what you want to clean out. Look at that. So you want to clean this out until there's no dirt anymore on the cotton. Okay, so this is it. Okay, next we want to take our glue and we want to put it onto the insert. Make sure that you're not using too much, but also not too little. And now you stick it into the shaft. Okay. Next you take a towel, a paper towel, and you want to wipe away the excess of the super glue. And then also automatically I'm taking the old tip and I screw it out of the shaft. Okay, so now we have glued in the insert and there's no residue of super glue. And also if you are using a protective cap, you can easily wipe it off. And then you take your actual tip that you want to use and screw it in. And this way you have no residue of super glue on your tip or at your protective cap. I have to say that this tip combination looks really nice. So, and then from here you can interchange your tips. You can take this one, for example, change it out. And because it has about the same weight, it should also have about the same flight. Okay guys, so this is how you can make your own personal arrow, and I think it's looking really great. Of course you can go on to Amazon and buy the same equipment like me right now, but it probably will not help you because you will probably need a different spine value and you will also need a different length of arrow. Unless you are exactly the same person as me, you cannot use my values that I showed here today. So make sure that you're visiting a professional archery shop, and there you can find out all of these important data which is going to help you to shoot better and to make your arrows fly better. So that's really important. Don't go on Amazon right now, don't buy the same equipment as me. Go to a professional archery store. They will measure out your draw length, your draw weight, and then they will know what kind of spine value you need for your personal arrows. Yeah, so next time I'm going to shoot these arrows at my favorite archery range, and then we will see how accurate I am with the new arrows. And if you want to see that, make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Stay tuned till next time.